Hello and welcome back to Crystal Confab. I'm joined by my fellow Confabbers, Kyle and Adam, and we're talking about one of those really unusual things, something that maybe a lot of you haven't seen or heard of, or a little frustratingly found in your crystal books, even if you do own a piece. And that mineral is Violane, also called Violane. Both are in use in the English language. And this is one of those really rare occurrences in the mineral kingdom. To my knowledge, it's found in four countries on Earth: Germany, Greece, Italy, and the good old US of A. And this is usually found in shades of lavender to violet, sometimes erring towards blue. And it is what occurs when we end up with some diopside that has a little extra manganese in it. It can actually be a whole host of, we'll say, family members, close relatives of diopside mixed in there, but they all kind of share that extra manganese. And admittedly, when this got added to the queue of episodes, I flagged it in my head to go, oh, I should really get a piece of violin to work with for this. And then before I knew it, it was the recording day. So, what is it about violin that you guys love? Because I'd love to learn from you before I talk about it from my perspective.
Well, it's one that I've got a great love for when I discovered it. You know, when it comes to crystals, the Disneyland of crystals is the Tucson, Arizona rock show that happens at the start of each year. And I used to in the past, probably about 15 years ago now. God, time flies. I would actually go every year. I used to sell crystals online and I would stock up on and what I specialize on is rare and unusual crystals that you couldn't buy in a crystal shop because it just didn't make sense for crystal shops to carry these types of things. So, and I, just like you said, I'd seen in one of the books this crystal called Violane. I love green diopside and think, oh, there's a blue one. I was like, I have to find myself some of this. Now, one of the things I love about Tucson is, there are these big halls where you go and everyone's got their displays, but also a lot of hotels get converted into crystal display houses where every room is someone from somewhere around the world, the bed thrown into the corner, and crystals just laid out everywhere. And it's a real melting point pot of cultures where you get to see, everyone in their different levels of customer service and so on. Some people are really enthusiastic and greeting you and willing to do absolutely everything to help you choose the right crystals. And other people just kind of point you in the right direction. So I remember looking for Violane, and I'd heard that there were some Russians that had some Violane. And so I ended up walking into this small hotel room. There were three Russian gentlemen sitting in the room. I'm like, do you have any Violane? And this is a rare crystal. And they kind of, one just at the back there. And I go back, and there's a whole tray of it, different pieces, blocks, slices, and that type of thing. And I'm like, I love it. And I had a bit of a big budget that year. So I came back and I went, how much for the whole tray? And I've never seen three disinterested people become so hospitable so quickly. And from that, I acquired a whole range of different Violane. And I've been working with it, and I'll share a little bit about what I've found and what I found with the students that would work with it in just a moment. But Kyle, have you had much experience with it?
I would say all of my experience is totally your fault. This piece was, I would say, from that tray.
It
This
is.
was bought from one of your sales, I don't know how many years ago. And I, the same as you, when I find out that there's like a range of colors in something, like Pokemon, you got to catch them all. And I want one of everything. And I was like, I need to get a piece. I don't know what it's about. I'll figure it out. Adam, if he likes it, I'm sure there's some worth in it. And I think I've had this piece for about a decade. I would have gotten it from you quite a long time ago in a sale. So yeah, I've really enjoyed working with it. It's been quite an interesting one for me. It's helped with that sort of expanse of knowledge, helping to understand and process more information.
And this was what was really exciting is I only found information about it in one book, and it was just a little section that didn't really tell you that much. So it was really nice. And I think today we're going to talk a lot about how we all journey through and discover what a crystal is when we've got no reference to tell us what on earth to do with it as well. So one thing that I like to do is I like to, my own experiences, but I also, because I was teaching a lot, when I got the violin, and I had a lot of pieces, I had a whole tray of it. I just gave a whole group of people one for the class and said, let's meditate with this. I'm not going to tell you what it is. Just tell me what you got. So overall, what I've summarized from Violane from my experiences and from other people's, some people have these ideas that maybe a crystal was planted here on the earth from star beings or some creature out there. And if I had to put my money that just one was, Violane would be it. It's very ethereal, very heavenly. To be honest, I'm a bit of a more of an earthbound magician. I really work with what's on the earth, and I like the earthly realms and the fey realms and the gnome realms and so on. I'm not really into star beings like Arcturus and the Syrians and the Lyrians and so on. But if you are, I think this is a really valuable tool to allow you to connect with this. It really has this really expansive celestial connecting energy. So anyone who feels that they're not from here, this could be a really great crystal to work with in this way. I also found it can be really great for working with the angelic realms. It's got a bit of a heavenly feel to it as well. But also other people were finding it was a little bit oceanic. And, there's some thoughts that dolphins and whales are keepers of ancient knowledge as well. And I think this is definitely something for sitting down with, meditating, closing your eyes, maybe putting some whale song or dolphin music on, and just imagining, being in the water, being with a whale, being with a dolphin, and if they could relay information to you, what would that be? Violane could really help with that. So I think that's one way that has kind of been this group consensus of it's a real great channeler for connecting to other starry realms. We've just come out of the beautiful blood moon in Pisces, and this is a crystal I love to work with, that real Piscean energy of real dreaminess for that kind of celestial reason. But I also find this is a really strong stone for helping us to remind you of the magic of life. Now, sometimes I'm glad that my social media algorithms will kind of show me these really amazing videos sometimes of something happening in nature or something happening up in the heavens. And you're just like, wow. And I think Violane, as we get older, is a really great crystal to work with because, when we're young, we have these big dreams of what we're going to do with our lives and what we're going to be, whether we're going to be an astronaut when we're 5 or we're going to be famous when we're 15. But then as we get older, we tend to get realistic and we've got to, we kind of start settling down into everyday life and it can get a bit mundane. And I think Violane is this beautiful crystal just to wear, carry, sit with. Just remember the magic that is in life and the magic that can happen every day and the small wonders, and even to give you permission to dream again. So if you are feeling life to just be a bit like, what's the point, or feeling a bit apathetic, I think this crystal is really great for expanding your awareness of the magic in this realm, but also, as I've mentioned before, the magic in other realms as well. So that's how I really like it. Kyle, what have you found with your piece over the last decade that it's brought up for you?
I love the cool blue tones. We love that sort of energy. For me, it has been, I would say, a different journey. For me, it has helped me with the expanse of knowledge and understanding. And when I say knowledge, like people say knowledge is power, right? The more you know, the more you can do, the more you can create, the more you can strategize, but with great power comes great responsibility. There's all this association with it. And I find Violane helps you to understand and process more information. It's helped me to digest and understand this journey over the last 15 plus years for me, especially the last decade, has been like overwhelming in the amount of knowledge that I've had to digest and understand and process. It has been constant from a gemological standpoint, mineralogical standpoint, as well as a spiritual standpoint, an esoteric standpoint, as well as personal, mental, emotional. Like there has been so much. And it's normal as we become adults, we deal with more, we have to process more, but it has allowed me to both learn and teach. It has allowed me to be comfortable knowing You know, when you know too much, sometimes it can burden you, right? It can, I know too much information about the world, so it makes me depressed, right? Like, but when you know more, you can actually do more. When you understand that, yes, I know all of this about the world, but I also know that this is what I can do. I also know that this is who I am as a person. I also know that these are my skills, these are my gifts, this is what's happening in front of me. So it allows me to actually make the moves that I need to make for myself, strategize in a way that allows me to sort of think a few steps ahead whilst I'm doing what I'm doing. It allows me to know that there are repercussions. There are butterfly effects. There are ripples in the pond to all actions, choices, and decisions that we make. And I found it really useful. I find all diopside has this ability to understand what we need to do. Like green diopside for me, if you've ever worked with green diopside, chrome diopside, like it helps me really understand what I need to do to take care of myself. Like it's a healer taking care of themselves when they've given too much out. And so Violane for me is like, when you know too much, it can be too much. But let's flip that. How can I use this power, this knowledge, all of this information to my advantage? How can I work with it? How can I be at my best, do more, but also not burden myself, right? Not feel like I need to do too much. It's with that knowledge that you understand what you can and can't do. So it gives you that peace, that serenity. It allows you to actually breathe. I work with the one pairing that I really have with it is Cowlinite. So I have this skull and bracelet that are Cowlinite, and they sit on that violane, and they both have this sort of wavy harmony, and it helps like it all just like flow through, and all the information can kind of wash over me, and I can go, okay, I want that. I need that. That can wash away. That can go away. It helps me to be picky and choosy. It helps me to be selective and more empowered with all of that. I can actually be more decisive. I know more, so I can go, oh, there's a lot of noise happening around me, but I can still pick and choose what's right for me. I can still speak up when I need to speak up, and I can shut up when I need to shut up. I can utilize what I know. And I found it really useful in that effect because I'm a very passion driven person. I can have a lot to say. And sometimes I need to shut up. And that's something I've definitely learned over the last decade is listening more, speaking less, and how much that brings. And that's again that knowledge. The more you listen, the more you know, the more you hear what people are saying, but also you can see what they're saying despite what they're saying to you. You become more observant of being able to like read between the lines, being able to read body language, being able to understand the bigger picture of situations. It is a um, eagle eye perspective, but I guess like Adam says, on a star being scale, like you can see it on a global scale. You can actually see things from such a big level that you can go, okay, this is my piece of the puzzle. This is where I am, and this is what I'm going to do about it. And this is how I'm going to live my life. And this is my truth, right? Blue stones, that connection to expression, to truth, to authenticity. It always seems to come around again. Manganese helps us to really be, I think, authentic. There's something about that within so many stones that it works with that has an authenticity to it. And I think this is a level of authenticity that maybe its rarity speaks of like a lot of people aren't comfortable with that authenticity. A lot of people aren't actually able to embrace it. It's a lot. It's a lot to handle in this world that is so noisy and so constant. To find that peace and serenity is a lot.
Mm. I'm so glad that you brought up green dioxide as well, which I absolutely love. When it comes to connecting, I guess, with like the spiritual consciousness of Gaia, that would probably be one of my favorite crystals. It's just something about it. So, do you think there's a really nice way you could pair violane and green dioxide together, Kyle?
Oh, absolutely. I've got all the diopsides in my collection here as well, just in case we needed to touch on them, because I do often pair them all together. So the chrome diopside helps with that more natural connection. I've found purple diopside to be really expansive of your psychic gifts and understanding. It really helps to like push that envelope of what you can do psychically. And then there's Black Star Diopside, which I think is the best. Like it is so cool, it's so protective, it's so fierce, it's so empowering, and it's like I can do this. I find it like a warrior energy. Like it's so strong and it's so powerful and it's so ready to take on things. So I love to bring them all together and pair them all together. But then, as I said, I love to bring Cowlinite or something soft that helps you to really breathe into the expansive nature that it brings.
I think if anyone who's tuning in at the moment hasn't worked with any of the diopsides, obviously we're talking a lot about Violane today, but you're exactly right. The green diopside, the black star diopside. I actually don't have any purple diopside, so I've got to go shopping. I know, shame. But I think there's some real magic and power in these crystals, and they don't get a lot of attention, do they?
I would say people always talk about dioptase and maybe forget and say diopside by accident and then go, hold on, no, I mean dioptase. And it definitely has more like fame, but I think diopside is probably more common. You actually find it around the world even more. I have this really cool specimen from Quebec, which has the clear sort of colorless diopside with green garnet. It's from the Jeffrey mine, which is very famous. I love this as a combination. Like the clear colorless diopside is like stillness. Like
Mm.
it's this like silence, it's this stillness, it's this ability to stop and listen and sort of really open up. And I just think they're just so beautiful. I love when you find tanzanite with the green diopside attached to it, like those beautiful crystals from Tanzania. I don't have one in my collection. It's something that I would love, but that's something that I would love to get. That combination of tanzanite and diopside, I think looks so cool and I'm sure would feel beautiful as well.
Yeah. Now, going from people that are kind of gushing over our collections of Violane and diopside, Nicholas, you're going to have to take a different approach on how you would work with Violane today, I believe.
Yeah, I think this is probably a really good time to talk about ways that we can strategize how to get to know a crystal, particularly when you can't find much about it, or when what you find you don't resonate with or have difficulty trusting. So, this is what I call decoding a crystal, and I've got really explicit instructions for this in Crystal Basics. There's a, extracted kind of synopsis of some of these themes in my pocket encyclopedia as well. But the first step when you get a rock, you can't find it in your favorite book, like Violane. I think I have found references to it in 3 books out of approximately 500 behind me. None of them ones that I wrote, because I don't own a piece. So before you sit down to do anything else, if you can get your hands on it, start with your primary experience. How does that energy feel in your body? How does it show up for your emotions? What is it like to your spirit? If you could maybe personify that energy in some way, what kind of personality does it have? If it had a color, if it had a taste, just all these kinds of what ifs and just experience that. I'm obviously going to fast forward through this bit because I haven't done that homework without a piece of violin just yet. And then my very next step, once I kind of suss out how I feel about a rock, is I go, all right, let's check out its geology. And that's going to give us some clues about its energy. So, with most of the pyroxene supergroup of minerals, of which all of the diopsides are the most prominent, the most easily found species, they tend to form in metamorphic environments, usually in things like metamorphosed limestones, in other words, marble. And that is, in fact, where the kind of type location for the really like deep dark blue violet violin was discovered in Italy in this kind of geologic environment. So when we start looking at metamorphic rocks and the minerals that are in them, usually what we call tertiary minerals, they're formed when we've got heat and pressure transforming pre-existing things. This is a theme we've talked about when talking about other rocks, for example, emerald. So it's no surprise that a rock like this is something that's going to support us through periods of transformation. They are going to give us the inertia to see changes through to the end. So if we're trying to invite a shift in our lives and we we burn out, we run out of steam, we feel like we're going to give up, Violane might be a really nice option for that. They come to our aid when the pressures of life or the heat of life feels overwhelming. Something like most marble, in which Violane tends to form, is going to occur through things like contact metamorphism, where you've got underground magma that is radiating out to other rocks, or in fault zones where we have tectonic plates crushing into each other and squeezing those rocks into new formations. So literally being changed by the pressure, it can help us kind of do the same with grace. They're wonderful when we need some assistance with regulating our emotions, when we need to perform some self-reflection, because change is uncomfortable. And so it supports us with that. The next thing I look at would be the crystal structure. And all diopsides, inclusive of Violane, are going to be monoclinic minerals. So the word monoclinic means one inclined angle. So you've got two axes that are going to meet at a right angle and one that doesn't. It can be any number of different angles. It's just not 90 degrees. And if we were to kind of look at the unit cell of a lot of them in cross section, they kind of look like parallelograms. They've got this forward movement, this tilt to them. So monoclinic minerals have a tendency to help us get that momentum in life. They're often things that we might be drawn to if we get tunnel vision and we need a bigger, broader perspective on things. We need to, maybe take a step back and see how our movement, our work, our energy ties into the bigger picture. And that can help us face our fears and feel safe in the process when we can contextualize that work. The next step that I take a look at is something's chemical formula. Thankfully, diopside is short. We're not going to focus on the augite and omphacite that are also usually part of the makeup of Violane. That's going to be too much to work with here. But it's a calcium magnesium silicate. And we know that particularly in the really saturated blue-purple varieties, there's a good amount of manganese in them. And the softer blues, they're going to be mixed with quartzite kind of admixture. So we're going to get extra silica in that. We don't really have to account for too much of that here. But calcium is something that provides structure. Think of it as restrictive and binding, not necessarily in a bad way. You need a container that restricts your water if you want to serve yourself something to drink. You need an environment in which you can restrict outside influences to rest and recuperate. So we can certainly see a sense of protective work, but also something that addresses the underlying structure of things. Calcium can really help us ensure that we know where our psyche fits into that as well. How are we relating to our environment? Magnesium. Magnesium is something that kind of softens our state of being. I tend to associate it with kind of cooling off fiery emotions. If we feel like we're faced with confusion or fear or stress, it can help us shift that towards a positive mental affect, help us kind of have a can-do attitude so we can get through that. When we look at magnesium-bearing minerals, they're also great for any kind of emotional release. They're going to help the things that are stuck and stagnant find a healthy expression out. As a silicate mineral, we've got silicon and oxygen in there. Silicon is something that bridges the material and the spiritual. It is a natural kind of amplifier of energies. It is one of the most abundant bases that we find for rocks. There are so many different silicate minerals out there. So trying to paint them all in broad strokes is hard to do because they're all unique, but they do have this kind of expansive, energetic quality to them, thanks to the silicon. And the oxygen gives us that, literal breath of life, that infusion of life force that we need. And then when we start to think about that trace manganese, that's when we start to see, I think, what makes this so different to other forms of diopside. Manganese is grounding and protective, particularly to our emotional body. It helps us. I always think of manganese as kind of representing the pericardium in Chinese medicine or in our physical anatomy. That is the membrane around our heart that keeps the stuff the heart needs in and the stuff the heart doesn't need out. It prevents infection. It allows us to make sure we get a safe transfer of nutrients and waste across that membrane. But it does allow us to have this kind of selectively permeable energy around us when it comes to our emotions. They can help us transform irritability, anxiety, fear into states of generosity, empathy, and trust. And when we start to put all of that together, I think it paints a picture of a stone that gives us the kind of internal mental space to really fuel our personal transformation. Uh, my third step of decoding, once I have my primary experience and I've like listed out all those different factors and really thought about any historical context that we might have, we don't for this rock. There is no traditional folklore to it. Then I always try to compare those sets of data with what other folks have to say. And I mentioned there's precious little out there about Violane, which I'm sure Adam and Kyle have also encountered. Um, Probably the longest write-up I've ever seen is in this book by Cassandra Eason, 1001 Crystals. And you'd be surprised at how many things she says that corroborate what you've both said, what I found in my decoding process. So, for example, she says it releases stifled emotions connected with buried tragedy, humiliation, or loss, and enables you to break taboos imposed by families or communities. It offers sanctuary from the world. She also says that it shields against over-reliance on our devices. And she suggests that it has a connection to dolphin energy, to star being energy. It's all in there. So whether we want this really kind of analytic approach, like I like to use, an experiential one where we, gather it through hands-on practice, or a purely intuitive one where we kind of download or channel the expression of the stone, oftentimes the more we work with something through any one of these three methods, we start to notice they all lead us toward the same direction. And that's exactly the experience I've had here listening to both of you talk about violin.
Amazing. It was interesting what you read there from Cassandra Easton. Was one of them stops the reliance on technology or being distracted by technology?
Yeah.
So it's almost like it's the doom scrolling crystal. If you notice that you sit there at night on your phone, you need to go sit outside with your violin and just remember, stop living in other people's lives, start living in your own life instead, type of thing. Now, one thing we talk about, I love to kind of encourage people to do, and a bit of shameless self promotion for myself. In 2027, it's a bit of a wait away, but I've got a calendar coming out which will actually give you for every single day of the year something to do with one of your crystals. So actual activities. Now, when it comes to Violane, I do kind of feel that this one is more of a just sit and be crystal with it. What do you find, Kyle? I know you like to make grids with your crystals and you like to pair. I do, like I've got a pendant that I had made for myself out of Violane. I wear it occasionally, but I find this one is more of a stillness crystal than a do something crystal. What do you find?
I would wholeheartedly agree. I very rarely have, I would actually say, I don't think I've ever carried this with me on a like out and about in that sort of way. I think it has always been a sit and connect crystal. It is in a grid. It, as I said, it has the cowlinite on it, but it has three other skulls with it that are alien traveler skulls. So they've got like the elongated head, one of them being actinolite, one of them being dumortierite, the other one being a smoky citrine. And then there's aqua aura in there. I have labradorite, calcite, and agate in there, as well as more kaolinite, funnily enough. So there's a bit of a theme going on there. I do love it. Those sort of elongated skulls, that energy helps that, like, for me, like working through dimensions, like going from here to there to here to there. That's very sort of star being, that's very sort of intergalactic, very kind of expansive. And when I really want to sit and open up, that's the grid that I sit with.
Amazing. Do you think this is a crystal that everyone who's listening right now should rush out and get, or do you think it just maybe as you mentioned before, Kyle, it's just for if you're called to it, then hearken to that call. But if not, then maybe you don't need it in your collection.
I would say that's the same with most crystals. Like if you're really drawn to it, definitely connect and work with it. But if it's out of your price range, if it's hard to come by, oh, excuse me, don't bother. But maybe you are called to it. Maybe that cough is a connection. Maybe we need to find another Adam that's bought the a whole tray and has it to give out. Maybe that's why it's so hard to come by, because a certain someone got a big old stock of it and hoarded it, and it's all around Perth.
Quite possibly. And what about yourself, Nicholas? Have we lured you into the Violane Club, or are you not rushing out to get it out from this chat?
If I come across a piece for the right price and it catches my eye, I don't think I'm going to be able to say no.
Well, we'd love to know what everyone else thinks. Let us know in the comments. Have you got Violane? We've had some different ideas on what it's good for. We'd love to know what your ideas are. And if you haven't got it, how did we go? Did we promote it and sell it to you enough? Unfortunately, that tray is long gone now. I've just got my few humble pieces left. But if you'd like to find yourself a piece, let us know in the comment section below. While you're lingering around there, don't forget to subscribe to the channels that you're watching this on and like it and share it with someone else, your crystal bestest buddy. We'll be back next week when we're going to dive into another buddy of ours, another crystal of ours. Until then, take care and blessed be.